finish The Tiger Rising, chapter 29, page 115. Rob and his father worked with shovels to dig a hole that was deep enough and wide enough and dark enough to hold the tiger. And the whole time it rained. "We got to say some words over him," said Willie Mae when the hole was done and the tiger was in it. "Can't cover up nothing without saying words." "I'll say the poem," said Sistine. She folded her hands in front of her and looked down at the ground. "Tiger, tiger, burning bright, in the forests of the night," she recited. Rob closed his eyes. "What immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry?" Sistine continued. "In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fires of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire?" To Rob the words sounded like music, but better. His eyes filled up with tears again. He worried that now that he had started crying, he might never stop. "That's all I remember," Sistine said after a minute. "There's more to it, but I can't remember it all. You say something now, Rob," she said. "I don't got nothing to say," said Rob, "except for I loved him." "Well," said Willie Mae, "what I got to say is I ain't had good experiences with animals in cages." She reached into her dress pocket and took out the wooden bird and bent down and laid it on top of the tiger. "That ain't nothing," she said to the tiger. "Just a little bird to keep you company." She stepped back and away from the grave. Rob's father cleared his throat. He hummed softly, and Rob thought that he was going to sing, but instead he shook his head and he said, "I had to shoot him. I'm sorry, but I had to shoot him. For Rob." Rob leaned into his father, and it felt for a minute like his father leaned back. Then Rob picked up his shovel and started covering the tiger with dirt. And as he filled the grave, something danced and flickered on his arm. Rob stared at it, wondering what it was, and then he recognized it. It was the sun, showing up in time for another funeral. "I'm sorry I made you do it," Sistine said to Rob when he was done. "He wouldn't be dead if I hadn't made you do it." "It's all right," said Rob. "I ain't sorry about what I did." "We can make a headstone for him," said Sistine, "and we can bring flowers and put them on his grave, fresh ones every day." She slipped her hand into his. "I didn't mean what I said before about you being a sissy, and I don't hate you. You're my best friend." The whole way back to Kentucky Star, Rob held on to Sistine's hand. He marveled at what a small hand it was and how much comfort there was in holding on to it. And he marveled, too, at how different he felt inside, about how much lighter, as if he had been set something heavy down and he had walked away from it, without bothering to look back. Chapter 30. That night his father sang to Rob as he put the medicine on his legs. He sang the song about mining for gold, the one that he used to sing with Rob's mother. And when he was done with the medicine and the song, he cleared his throat and he said, "Caroline loved that song." "Me too," Rob told him. "I like it too." His father stood up. "You're going to have to tell Beauchamp that you was the one that let the tiger go." "Yes, sir," said Rob. "I'll tell him I was the one who shot him, but you got to admit letting him go." "Yes, sir," said Rob again. "I might could lose my job over it," his father said. "I know," Rob told him, but he wasn't afraid. He thought about Beaucamp's shaking hands. Beaucamp was the coward. He knew that now. "I thought I would tell him I could work for him to pay for what I had done." "You can offer him up some reasonable kind of solution," said his father, "but it don't mean he'll go for it. There ain't no predicting with Beaucamp, other than to say he's going to be mad." Rob nodded. "And on Monday," his father continued, "I am to call that principal and tell him you're going back to school. I ain't messing around with that you taking you to any more doctors. You're going back, and that's that." "Yes, sir," said Rob. He didn't mind the thought of going back to school. School was where Sistine would be. His father cleared his throat. "It's hard for me to talk about your mamma. I wouldn't never have believed that I could miss somebody the way that I miss her. Saying her name pains me." He bent his head and concentrated on putting the cap on the tube of medicine. "But I'll say it for you," he said. "I'll try to say it on account of you." Rob looked up at his father's hands. They were the hands that held the gun that shot the tiger. They were the hands that put the medicine on his legs. They were the hands that had held him when he cried. They were complicated hands, Rob thought. "You want some macaroni and cheese for dinner?" his father said, looking up at Rob. "That sounds all right," said Rob. "Macaroni and cheese sounds real good." That night Rob dreamed he and Sistine were standing at the grave of the tiger. They were watching and waiting. He didn't know what, but then he saw a flutter of green wings and he understood. It was the wooden bird, only he wasn't made of wood. He was real, and he flew up out of the tiger's grave, and they chased him, laughing and bumping into each other. They tried to catch him, but they couldn't. The bird flew higher and higher until he disappeared into a sky that looked just like the Sistine Chapel. In his dream, Rob stared up at the sky, admiring all of the figures and the colors, watching as he disappeared into them. See, said Sistine in his dream, I told you it was like fireworks. He woke up smiling, staring at the ceiling of the motel room. Guess what? His father called to him from outside. What? Said Rob back. There ain't a cloud in the sky, said his father. That's what. Rob nodded. He laid in bed and watched the sun poke his way through the curtain. He thought about Sistine and the tiger he wanted to make for her. He thought about what kind of wood he would use and how big he would make the tiger. He thought about how happy Sistine would be when she saw it. He lay in bed and considered his future, and outside his window, the tiny neon Kentucky star rose and fell, competing bravely with the light of the morning sun. And that is the end of this book, The Tiger Rising. Here's some questions that you can think about after you've listened to the entire book. Why do you think Kate DiCamillo chose this particular setting for her book? There are so many connections to art in this story. Why do you think art is important to the characters? Instead of carving the tiger, Rob decides to carve Sistine. Why do you think that this is significant? Sistine and Rob handle problems and situations in opposite ways. Which one of those do you think is better? How does owning a tiger make Beaucamp feel? What is the significance of the tiger's cage for Sistine? What is the significance of the cage for Rob? Why do you think Rob finds it so difficult to look at the caged tiger? What are some of Rob's feelings that begin to surface with Sistine's help and her friendship? How does Sistine help Rob deal with his grief? What is the significance of the title, The Tiger Rising? And when do we first see a reference to this title? What do you think it means? Those are some things to think about after you're done listening to the story. And if you want to write down some notes and attach them to the assignment, feel free to do that. That would be amazing. Guys, have a wonderful day, and I'll be doing another book